Welcome to the Martin Perry House in the Powell-Liberty Historical Society made program. My name is Scott Whittick. I'm the Vice President of the Board of Directors of the Powell-Liberty Historical Society. We're very, very happy to see such a huge crowd tonight. This is the biggest crowd we've ever had here. It's kind of obvious we've probably outgrown our space here. And if you're not already a member, we invite you to become a member. We have membership forms available. You can also go out on the website for the Powell-Liberty Historical Society, and you can sign up through the website. We have all different kinds of memberships to fit whatever your situation is. As you know, we do not charge for these presentations, but donations are greatly appreciated. It helps for the upkeep of this great house, which is in great shape, and we want to keep it that way. So we'll get on with why you all are here. Sharice Williams is a local author and paranormal investigator who has investigated all over Ohio, most recently right here at the Martin Perry House. Tonight she will be presenting on how history and the paranormal go hand in hand and explain what hauntings are, and will also share some of her favorite Ohio haunts. So, please welcome.
Thank you, everybody. All right, thank you for your patience, too. That was kind of stressful. I'm glad this is working. Okay. So thank you guys, and thank you to the Powell-Liberty Historical Society for allowing me to be here, and then also the investigation that I got to do as well, which was really fun. Who am I? We kind of went over that. Author, paranormal investigator, and spiritual guide. I've been doing this for roughly 20 years, researching and out there actually investigating. I've investigated all over the country and the state, and Ohio is my favorite. Ohio is weird. There is so much here. And I have friends over on the West Coast and Southwest, and they're always like, oh, I'm so jealous you're in Ohio, because we have a lot here. I am a believer in the paranormal, but I have a level-headed approach as well. I'm not one of those people that every bang you hear is a ghost. It's fun to look for the logical explanations, because then if you can't explain it, that makes it a lot more fun, because then what is that? And then, learning about history as it goes with the paranormal is one of my favorite things, getting to go to these historic places, hearing the stories and the history, which we're going to get into. All right, so histories and ghosts. How do ghost hunting and history relate to one another? A lot of the places investigated are older locations. I do get asked sometimes, does it have to be old to be haunted? And no, not every old place is haunted, and some new places are haunted. But the fun part of it is getting to go to these old locations, and like smaller locations like this may not have major historical events, but it is really fun to get to come in and just hear the everyday life stories of the people that lived in the past. When people are going to these locations, they get to hear these stories, and that keeps the history alive. Once we stop telling the stories, we lose it, and people don't get to hear about it. They don't get to come in and experience it and see the places. And so really sharing these stories is important. When people do get to go to these places and they get evidence, so do you guys know what an EVP is? Have you heard of that? So if you don't know what it is, it's when you're doing like on a voice recorder, you ask questions and then you kind of leave a pause in hopes that a spirit will respond. And sometimes when you play it back, you do hear a voice that wasn't there when you were initially asking the questions. So sometimes when you get those kinds of responses, you may get a name or a date, or even you may ask, how did you die? And you'll get like a response for that. And so people will then dig into history that way. So maybe they weren't really excited about history, but then they get these pieces of evidence and they're like, okay, well, now I want to see, is this real? Like, did this really happen here? And that prompts them to really dig into the history, which I think is really cool. It kind of inspires people to become history buffs to prove their evidence. Because there is an interest in the ghost stories of locations, it helps create an interest and desire to preserve these buildings and locations. For example, a lot of locations, historical locations, are opening up their doors now for the paranormal. I mean, as we can see here, paranormal isn't quite as taboo as it used to be 15, 20, 30 years ago. If you said, I believe in ghosts, people looked at you like you had a third eyeball or something. And now it's kind of just become a lot more mainstream, which I think is pretty cool. So more and more historical locations are opening their doors, and you can go. I mean, if there's a historical place here in Ohio that has piqued your interest, go to their website And a lot of times they will have paranormal events or investigations that you can book. And so that's pretty cool. And the more people that are interested in the paranormal, the more locations are opening up for these types of things. And the good side to that is they charge for these usually. And the money earned goes to preserving the history of the locations and the preservation of the buildings. For example, in Waynesville, Ohio, that's their historical society. And Waynesville, Ohio I've surprisingly not investigated here, but the whole town's supposed to be insanely haunted. And they embrace it. Like every business is like, yeah, we're haunted. Here's our ghost over here. Come in and talk about it. And the historical society there has embraced it. And they offer ghost hunting classes, haunted walking tours, investigations, all sorts of cool stuff. And the ghost stories told keep younger generations coming, because we watch these TV shows and we're like, I want to experience that. I want to do that. Where can I do that? You get on Google, haunted places in Ohio. And if they embrace it, you may find Waynesville, Ohio, and you go there to hear the ghost stories. So it kind of drives tourism as well. And then the revenue goes towards upkeep. And then in Waynesville, they actually help fund other buildings in their area. So they've done so well with their haunted tours and classes that they're able to use that money to not only maintain their building, but the firehouse there as well, they restored. What are ghosts and what causes a haunting? Nobody really knows. The end. Thanks for coming. But for real, nobody knows for sure. There are plenty of people that will say, no, this is absolutely what a ghost is. This is absolutely what causes a haunting. We don't really know. We have theories. One of which is the lost soul theory, which is kind of your traditional ghost. When you think of ghosts, you think of kind of somebody who passed away and maybe their spirit did not move on to wherever it is that they're supposed to go for whatever reason. And so they're just kind of here wandering around, interacting with us. That's one of the theories. Time slips and alternate realities is an interesting theory that, oh my gosh, could be its own presentation. But essentially the idea that, have you guys heard that time is not linear? And I'm not a physicist or anything, so I'm not going to explain this well. But time is not actually linear. Time is all happening at the same time. That's what the experts say. So right now, we're sitting here, and the Martin family could be here right now. Their time is happening, kind of overlapping our time. And so there's theories that when we see a ghost or we hear something, it's that maybe that whatever divide is dividing our time from theirs kind of thins out for a moment and we're able to see into their other side. And that's a fun theory to think of too, because what if there is the Martin family here in the 1900s and they're like, what is all this racket? I keep hearing these voices in the living room. Like, what is going on? So we could essentially be haunting the past. So that's a fun theory. Like I said, could really be its own presentation. Another theory is energy imprints. So we ourselves as humans are energetic. Our heart creates an electromagnetic field around us and it interacts with other people. All of our energy, we're all crammed in here together. All of our energy is interacting with each other. So there's theories that our energy can kind of imprint into the environment. So this would be, we're going to talk about it in a second, residual hauntings where you can't really consciously interact with that spirit because it's just an energy imprint. It's like an imprint. I don't know how else to say that. Yeah, we're going to get into those types of hauntings in a second. So not every haunting happens from tragedy. If we take the energy imprint, for example, say you have a favorite chair and you sit in that chair every single day, all the time throughout your entire life, your energy could very well imprint onto that chair. And then maybe somebody purchases that chair after you pass away or somebody inherits it. And every now and then they look over and they see the outline of somebody sitting in it. You could essentially be haunting that chair, not consciously, not your spirit, but your energy imprint. And so that is a type of haunting. Didn't happen from tragedy, but it's still a haunting. All right. Types of ghosts and hauntings. So we kind of talked about the lost soul theory, which is kind of the traditional ghost when you watch movies and you hear about ghosts. That's kind of what you think of. These ghosts will interact with you if they're able to. So these are the ones where you say, can you knock on the wall? And you may hear a knock. Can you answer this question? And they may respond if they're able to. We don't know. Again, it's theorized that it takes a lot of energy for them to interact with our physical world because they are not physical, they're energy. And so for them to do something, it can be kind of strenuous for them. So that's also why, maybe you go in and it's very active for you one night, and then you go back into that room later in the night and you get nothing. And it could be maybe the ghost is just literally tired, which I've had a ghost tell me before it wanted a nap. It was tired. I said, is there anything you need? It said, I need a nap. So I left them alone after that. Residual hauntings, kind of what we were just talking about with the energy imprint. So residual hauntings are more just, somebody said it, a recording. If you're watching a movie, you can talk to the actors, but the actors on the screen don't know that you're talking to them, because it's a recording. And it's kind of the same with residual hauntings. They have no idea that you're there because they're just a recording, an imprint in time. So these ones you may hear some footsteps. Pretty common residual haunting themes are hearing footsteps or a door closing at a specific time every day. Kind of, again, if there was somebody who left their house every single day at the same time and took the same path through their house, you may hear those footsteps at that particular time. So those are fun, but those ones are kind of hard to investigate because, again, it's residual. It's just a recording. You can't really ask them to do things. Fragment hauntings. This is another one that could be a whole thing. This is a term that I have coined. It's based on a shamanic belief that, we have our energy body. And when we go through something traumatic or embarrassing, a piece of our energy fractures off or fragments off and kind of just stays in the location that this happened. So, for example, if somebody went to the hospital and it was really traumatic, a piece of their energy could fracture off and be stuck in that hospital. And so then when you go to investigate, you can interact with fragment hauntings. So they're kind of, if we looked at it as a spectrum with traditional conscious ghosts on this side and residual hauntings here, fragment hauntings kind of fall in the middle. So these ones, if you do interact with them and they respond, they're stuck in that time frame and in that mindset of when that trauma occurred. So if you were to ask, what year is it? They have no idea that it's 2024. They're stuck in whatever year it was that trauma occurred and in kind of that mindset. That one's, it's kind of sad to think about, but I think that's a little less sad than the entire soul being stuck. That one's, I don't know, that always makes me sad, especially when it's little kid ghosts. But I think, honestly, from my experience, 90% of hauntings are the fragment haunting. And again, in shamanic belief, if the person does some healing on themselves or they're finally in a good place to accept that fragmented trauma back into them, which again, because, time's not linear, so we're all existing at many different times right now. So even in a future life or a past life, you could claim that piece back into you. I don't know if any of this is, if I'm explaining this correctly or not for you guys. But this could also explain why some hauntings disappear. There's some places that are really haunted and active for many years, and then people start to go and they're like, nothing's happening. Like, I'm not getting anything, nothing's occurring. And it could be if that fragment haunting kind of rejoined its original source energy, it wouldn't be there anymore. Also with that, why hauntings kind of dissipate is the idea that energy dissipates eventually. Because we always talk about, we only see Victorian ghosts. Like, why is that? Like, we only see ghosts from the Civil War, Victorian days. Like, where's the caveman ghost? I haven't seen one. And maybe it's just because that energy is, from so long ago, it's kind of dissipated. And then also there are land and nature spirits. So there aren't just human ghosts. I forgot to include animals there. There's nature spirits, so these might be your fairies, depending on your belief, fairies and brownies and sprites. Some people even think Bigfoot is a nature spirit or a type of ghost. And animals as well. I've heard cats meowing. I've felt a cat rub up against my leg before. So it's not always just humans. And then objects also can become haunted. The same way that a location can become haunted, whether it's those energy imprints or a conscious haunting, objects can kind of become haunted in that same manner. I like the example of maybe there was a woman and she had a necklace that she just adored and loved throughout her life, and it was her prized possession. And so in death, she was like, I don't want to leave this necklace. This meant everything to me. So maybe now in death, her spirit is attached to that necklace, and she follows that necklace wherever that necklace goes so she can keep her eye on it. And similar to locations, an object doesn't have to be associated with something scary or traumatic or dark in order to be haunted. And then thought forms. I keep saying this, all of these could be their own presentation, but they really could. So if you're interested in any of these, do a Google search, deep dive, rabbit hole, super fun to think about. But thought forms is the idea that, again, we are energy, our brains are emitting all kinds of electromagnetic things going on. And the idea is that we can affect our environment with our mind and essentially create a ghost. And I've seen this at a location that we're going to talk about in just a moment. And I think that that's what has happened here, is somebody kind of went in with the idea that there was this little girl ghost there, and just time after time, everybody's going in there and they're trying to connect with this little girl. And as more and more investigators go in there, her story's kind of expanded, her energy has expanded. And the idea with the thought forms is they exist as long as we are giving them the energy. So as long as these people are going in there and investigating and putting their energy and focus and intent onto this spirit, it will essentially be living, which that's really interesting. And those will kind of dissipate again. If nobody's paying attention to those, they'll dissipate. And these ones, I think, sometimes get labeled as a demon or a more nefarious type of spirit, because they do essentially get their own thought, their own thinking, and they don't want to disappear. And so when they notice that maybe people aren't paying as much attention to them, they'll kind of lash out, because fear is a very powerful emotion, a very powerful energy. And so they kind of learn, all right, well, if I pretend that I'm a demon and I'm going to scratch you and I'm going to bang doors and I'm going to do whatever I can to freak you out, I know that that's going to give me a lot of energy, a lot of attention. So that's kind of my thought on thought forms. Haunted Powell. I didn't realize how tiny the picture was, but that's the amphitheater. In Powell, the ghost of a young boy has been seen at the amphitheater. People have physically seen him, or they've seen like a little shadow outline of a boy, and they've even said that their arms have been touched or kind of like grabbed onto, almost like a little kid trying to get your attention. So I went to the amphitheater with my friend Brittany, and we did a little investigation. So a spirit box, do you guys know what a spirit box is? Okay, in case you don't, it's pretty much just a radio. And it filters through or cycles through all of the radio stations really, really quickly. And it emits static, and you hear little blips of radio and, DJ chatter and that kind of thing. And the idea is that either spirits are utilizing that white noise, that static, to kind of generate energy to be able to speak through that device. Or some people think that the spirits are somehow manipulating the radio frequencies to kind of like stop the radio on a specific word that they want you to hear. And it's really a very interesting way to kind of have this back and forth dialogue with spirits. So that's what my friend Brittany and I did here at the amphitheater. We asked who was there, and we got the response, a boy, which right off the bat, we said, who's here? A boy. We asked how old he was, and he said 7. And when we asked why he was there, he said train injured. And it was interesting, too, because right around that time, a train passed by also. And we asked, did you get hurt on the tracks? And he said, feet from. So I do need to dive into this. We just did this recently, so I haven't had a chance to really dig into it. But I was going to ask, like, the police if they have record of maybe anybody, a small boy being injured on the train. But so, yeah, so if you're ever over there at the amphitheater, keep your eye out. I know, and it is kind of sad. I would like to think, because if he did get injured on the train, it was, traumatic, and so maybe it was more of that fragment haunting. So his whole spirit went on to wherever it needed to go, but there's just kind of that fragment of energy still there. That's what I would like to hope. The cemetery, that is one of the tombstones there at the cemetery right up there. And a man in a top hat has been seen in and around that cemetery. Have you guys seen anything weird over there? No. He's been seen standing in the cemetery, kind of right in front of it, and then at the intersection there, he's been seen kind of leaning up against a light post. Is he an actual ghost? There's a theory of the Hat Man. I don't know. Have you guys heard the Hat Man? Yet again, guess what? Could be its own presentation. It's a specific type of spirit, people think, because he is seen, a man in a top hat is seen all around. A lot of people talk about, especially when they have sleep paralysis, they'll say that they saw a man with a top hat standing in the corner of their room. Kind of freaky. But we went to the cemetery and investigated, again, did a spirit box session. I asked, is the top hat man here? And immediately, again, I'm here. And I said, are there other spirits too? And he said, yes. And I said, why are you here? And he said, follow. And this is where these spirit box sessions you don't want to jump to conclusions, but you do sometimes kind of have to piece it together, because sometimes it is full sentences that come out, and then other times it is kind of little bits and pieces. I said, do spirits follow you? And he said, easily. And do you live around here? And he said, once, I remember. So he could be a past Powell resident that now kind of maybe takes care of the spirits. I do like to incorporate tarot cards with my investigations as well as traditional equipment. So I did pull a tarot card and got the Hermit card, which to me indicates that he's kind of, I don't know if you know anything about the tarot, the Hermit card, it's an individual and he's kind of a shrouded, it gives me the sense of a top hat shadow man, and he's holding a lantern, kind of like leading the way. So kind of putting all that together, it to me seems like maybe the Hat Man is just kind of, he's leading spirits to and from places, which makes sense that he's seen by the cemetery. Oh, we recognize that place. The Martin Perry House. So I was lucky enough to be the first person to investigate here with my friend Brittany. I did anticipate it being maybe a little bit quiet because, as far as we know, nobody has investigated here. The spirits maybe didn't know how this equipment worked. They're not used to being spoken to, kind of interview style almost. So it was a little quiet, but upon reviewing my videos, there was a little bit more than I initially thought that came through. For one, we did the EVP session, so we had the digital voice recorder going, and we were asking questions. Didn't hear anything while we're asking the questions. We played it back, and we could just hear this tapping. It was the weirdest. It was just tap, 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 periodically after we asked a couple questions. So I don't know what that was about, and I kind of joked that maybe it was Morse code, but I don't know Morse code, so I couldn't figure it out, but that's kind of what it sounded like to me. So that was really interesting. That was right here in this room. Ooh, spooky. We then tried the piano because Alan told Brittany and I that Mrs. Perry did not like when people played the piano poorly. She was one of the last people to live in this house, and she was a piano teacher and did not like when you played the piano not well. Brittany kind of knows the piano, not that great, but she sat down and tried. And I was running the spirit box again. And I said, can you help Brittany play better? And I hope came through clear as day. I hope. And then it was interesting because, so a disembodied voice is a voice that you hear with your ear that doesn't seem to be coming from a living person or a radio or anything. And I heard help. And at first I was like, maybe I just was imagining that because the static was going. And I'm like, I don't know, but it didn't sound like it came through the spirit box. When I watched my video back, you can definitely hear it. And the creepy thing is that it sounds like my name or my voice. It sounds like me saying help after we were talking about, can you play the piano better? And the interesting thing about that is that we were investigating in the dining room and Alan was with us and I was listening to headphones with the spirit box. And multiple times I couldn't make out what the voice said, but it was Alan's voice coming through. So maybe there's a spirit here that is a mimicker, which is a kind of common spirit at a lot of locations. You'll hear the mimicker or even doppelgangers. They kind of mimic your voice or they'll even mimic your appearance. So I don't know if that's what's going on here. And then I kind of thought maybe because they're learning how to communicate, maybe they're utilizing our vocal frequencies or something to communicate themselves. And then, yeah, I wasn't quite sure because we didn't get anything definitive as far as like, yes, I'm Mrs. Perry and I'm haunting here. Like, we didn't get anything definitive like that, but we did get enough kind of back and forth responses that there was something here, I think, that we were communicating with. Oftentimes, though, when you are ghost hunting, it's almost like you're sending out a little beacon out into ghost world. And you'll find sometimes that, I don't know if they're just kind of wandering around and they're like, oh, somebody's investigating over here, like somebody's trying to communicate. This is my chance to talk. So I don't know if that's what happened because we did get a few names, which I think I put on here. Yes, I did. Okay. We got the names Annie, Inca, Mavis, and Fawns, which I laughed and I was like the Fawns, like, hey. But Alan said as far as he knew, none of those names really connected with anything. So were those wandering spirits? Was that just a coincidence? Not really sure. But I was pleasantly surprised at some of the activity, especially that mimicking. That was really wild to listen to that back and hear my voice, but not. Other locations that I am digging into and haven't had a chance yet to investigate, but you guys maybe can go and dig into it yourself, is the Craft House. It is a former Oddfellows building, and Prohibition is the former Knights of Pythias building. And secret society buildings are notorious for being haunted. I don't think I've ever heard of one that is not haunted. So I really want to get in there and investigate. Murphy Parkway, there used to be a horse racetrack there. And I can't remember exactly. I think Alan said 2 deaths occurred there as well. So that's a good point as well. Just because something is torn down doesn't mean that that location still can't be haunted. The building may not be there, but maybe the energy is in the earth. Maybe the spirit just likes that spot, and so they stay there. But so there very well could be a ghost or 2 at Murphy Parkway. The Columbus IT company, there used to be a shop called Mystic Nirvana that was in that building, and they talked all the time about how haunted that was. You know, they'd hear things all the time. They'd hear footsteps. Things would be moved. They'd see shadow figures. So I do want to go and ask the IT people if they've seen any ghosts. And then the Milano's Florist building is the former home of Dr. Campbell, who is hanging on the wall right back there. So that is another cool little piece of history. But I mean, oh my gosh, after talking to Alan and stuff, everything around here, there's so much history in all of these buildings. Again, history doesn't necessarily mean haunting, but a lot of the time it can. All right, diving into Haunted Ohio, I'm just going to share 3 of some of my favorite locations. I love Ohio. It was hard to narrow it down to just 3 locations. But the Madison Seminary, this is in northern Ohio. It was built in 1847 as housing for families of those killed in the Civil War. So a lot of women and children got to move into there once their husband or their father passed away in the war. It also served as a school and hospital. And then the ghost of Elizabeth Stiles, who was a spy during the Civil War and who stayed there, her ghost is seen a lot of the time there. And I'll get into what I've experienced there. The child that I was talking about that I think is kind of a thought form and not really a traditional ghost, that is at this location. Her name's Sarah. And some people do think she is a nasty spirit, and not, the D word, because she does sometimes lash out. But she lashes out, I've found from talking to people, when there hasn't been a lot of investigations at the facility. And so then the next people that come in, the ghost of Sarah kind of lashes out, and it could be maybe she's trying to stir up that fear energy to kind of reabsorb and re-up her own energy. Some of my favorite experiences there, I've been here a few times, is a chair that moved on its own. It was in the corner of one of the hallways, and then we all went downstairs, came back up, and it was just sitting in the middle of the hallway. So that was, we're like, what the heck? And we were all together too, so it's not like somebody wandered off and moved it. Like, we all went down to the break room. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
1847, housing for family of those killed in the Civil War?
Mm-hmm.
But the Civil War was after 1847.
It was built 47.
Oh.
Yeah, it was built in 1847. I think at that point it was a school, and then they opened it up for the families of those killed in the Civil War. I worded that weirdly. And then after it was the home for the families of the Civil War, it was a hospital for a short period of time. And then, I saw a full apparition of a woman. It was the same night that the chair moved. We were all in a little room, and I was standing out of the room, and there's a hallway this way. And I look over because I see a woman with long blonde hair walk past. And I was like, oh, that's my friend Sydney. But then I hear Sydney talking in the room in front of me, and I peeked in. I'm like, wait, we're all right here? And he's like, yeah. Like, I literally just saw a woman. I mean, plain as day, I completely thought it was my friend. Full apparition. So that was pretty wild. And then this is a location, actually all of the locations I'm going to share, you can investigate there. They also have a yearly convention, which is happening this summer, I believe, like June or July. And they host other events as well. The Mansfield Prison. I had to include this. I know a lot of us know about this, but I had to include it because how can you not? Just in case you don't know about the Ohio State Reformatory or the Mansfield Prison. It was started to be built in 1886 and was finished in 1910. in the Romanesque revival style. So it's kind of that like Gothic castle looking style. And it was initially intended as a halfway. Ooh. That's okay. I thought you fell for a second. I was like, oh no. We don't need you becoming a ghost. So it was initially intended as a halfway reformatory for to house young first-time offenders. And the movie Shawshank Redemption was filmed here. And there have been over 200 deaths on this property. And it was closed in 1990 due to overcrowding and inhumane conditions, which I think is perfect conditions for creating those fragment hauntings. I mean, think about how traumatic a prison is. Nobody wants to be there. So I think that there's a lot of fragment hauntings there. A couple of experiences that I've had there is a EVP clear as day that said, get out. And that was kind of, we're like, okay, we'll go to another, we'll leave you to your space. We'll get over here. And then I've seen shadow figures, and more than once it feels like somebody's standing right next to me and I turn and there's literally nobody there. Almost like you can feel the breath on you and you turn and there's just nobody. That happens quite a bit there. They have all kinds of tours, so maybe you're not ready to jump into investing ghosts yourself. You can go during the day for one of their history tours. They also have the Shawshank. If you love that movie, you can go and see all the filming scenes and everything there. They also offer paranormal investigations. Sometimes they do public investigations too, or you can rent it out for private. And then this weekend is the Parapsychon, their paranormal convention happening there. You just pay the $25 to get in for the tour and you get access to the whole convention, vendors, speakers, paranormal celebrities. I'll be there on Saturday, walking around. And then this location, this was one of the first places I ever truly investigated. And this is the Prospect Place in Trinway, Ohio. Have any of you heard of this place? Yeah. 1856, 29-room mansion built by abolitionist George W. Adams. It is on the National Register of Historic Places and an official Underground Railroad site. And it's now a nonprofit, and they open it up for daytime history tours as well as paranormal investigations, and all of the money goes into, again, restoring and maintaining. They've actually done so well on this. When I first went here, it was actually, his name was George Adams. He was a descendant of the original George Adams. He owned the property, and he lived on that back half there. So only the front half was open for investigations. And I mean, bless his heart, he tried to maintain it, but he was just one man. And so he kind of struggled and he was going to lose the property. And so this nonprofit jumped in to kind of take over things. And they've done wonders. He moved out. They cleaned and restored the second half there. So it's a beautiful place. I love it. Personal experiences, shadow figures, sitting in the basement. It's, really creepy old basement with the dirt floor. And it's one of those where you turn the lights off, you literally can't see the hand in front of your face. But when you're sitting there and your eyes kind of start to adjust to the darkness, you can start to see shadows and shapes at the end of the hallway that are darker than the dark, which is a little unsettling when you're sitting at the end of this hallway in a dirt basement by yourself. I was sitting there with my friend Adam, and he had the flashlight on his hand but turned off. And that thing clanged to the ground. I screamed. I yelled at him because I was startled. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, that wasn't me. Something that we were seeing coming down the hall smacked it out of his hand. I've heard footsteps. This was the last time I was there. Footsteps above us, just walking, pacing back and forth, back and forth. And we all took turns. There were 4 of us. We all went up there to try to hear it. When we were in the room above, we couldn't hear the footsteps. But when you were underneath it, you could hear them. I mean, we went outside to see, was there something banging on the side of the house? Could not debunk that at all. So that location is very active. Even if you do one of their daytime tours, you'll probably at least get some creepy feelings. I definitely recommend going and checking that out. And in case you want to get started ghost hunting yourself, here are some tips. There are lots of locations around Ohio. Like I said, I mean, you could probably, if you're just driving past and you're like, oh, that looks like an old building. What is that? Google it, and it could be available for investigations or even daytime tours. And if ghosts aren't your thing too, like I said, Ohio is weird. There's aliens here. There's like creatures in the Great Lake. There's all kinds of stuff. Bigfoot. Ohio, believe it or not, is huge for Bigfoot. There's actually a yearly convention at Salt Fork State Park, a Bigfoot convention. So if Bigfoot's your thing, get out there in the woods and check it out. If you don't want to pay for a location, cemeteries are always free. They're not necessarily always haunted. I have found that cemeteries seem to be more of kind of like a gathering place for spirits. I haven't come across a spirit that is stuck at the cemetery or who stays there. They just kind of like go there and maybe check in with each other, or I don't know, just to see what's happening. Or maybe it could be kind of like a little portal where that's kind of a doorway for them to enter into our world. Maybe that's where that hat man comes in, leading them to where you want to go. Let's go over here. But be respectful, of course, when you go to cemeteries. Some cemeteries don't allow you to investigate. I've seen signs on there. So if that's the case, obviously don't investigate. Never sit on tombstones. I've seen people do that a lot when they're investigating, which is not okay. Don't sit on the tombstones. And then, yeah, dig into any interesting history that you come across. There's a lot of, and I think maybe that's one of the reasons why Ohio is so weird, is there's so much history here in Ohio. There's so much. We got the river below us. We've got the Great Lakes above us. People travel through here all of these decades trying to get, to the west from the east, and lots of history. Wars fought here. All right, if you want to investigate, I got some basic equipment that I was going to show you. And if you guys want, we can turn the spirit box on. Do you guys want to? I don't know. Some people are not comfortable with ghost hunting, so I don't have to turn it on if you don't want. Huh? All right, I'll do that one last. Okay, so ghost hunting doesn't have to be expensive. It is. It can be. I mean, it is. Locations are pricey. Like the Mansfield prison, I think it's like $1,500 to book it for the night, which that's a lot. Prospect, I think it's like $50 a person or something. You have to have at least 2 people, I think. Equipment can be insanely expensive too. Easily $200 and up. But it doesn't have to be. This is a cat ball. It's a cat toy, and you can set these out. And ask the spirits to touch it because it lights up. Well, now it's not doing it, but it lights up by touch. So I've had these go off, and you can use these for kind of like yes/no responses. You can set 2 there and say if the answer is yes, can you touch the left one? And if it lights up, maybe that's them saying yes or no. This one, you guys have watched any ghost shows, you've probably seen this on there or something like this. This is a K2 meter, and it measures electromagnetic frequencies, or EMF. And the theory is that ghosts either themselves are electromagnetic, they emit electromagnetic frequencies, and so when they get close to this piece of equipment, it lights up, or they may just affect the energy in the atmosphere. These can be used kind of the same way to the cat ball. Ask questions, yes, no, it'll light up for yes or no. But you do have to be careful because like anything, this will probably, no, oh yeah, it kind of bleeped. Pretty much any electronics will set it off, your cell phone even. So if you do use these, make sure you put your phone on airplane mode so it's not sending off any frequencies because you can get false positives that way. All right, the spirit box. We can turn it on for a second in case you have not heard one before. They get really loud. They're really annoying. So I usually only use them for a little bit of time. But I guess we can see. Turn on. See if anything comes through. See, it's annoying. All right, if you guys hear anything, you can holler out. Are there any members of the Martin Perry family here? Oh my gosh! That would be great. Anyway, that's loud and annoying, so we'll turn that off. But you get the idea. But yeah, if you're going to buy any equipment, I definitely suggest investing in a spirit box. And that is it. Thank you guys for being here and listening. You guys have any questions about ghosts, hauntings, Ohio?
When you mentioned that you thought you heard tapping, was that on the spirit box or?
It was on the voice record. You guys may not be able to hear. I do have my, go to my YouTube channel. But no, I do have a video of the investigation here on my YouTube channel, which, you can behind my social media. There we go. And you can hear the tapping there.
And you thought it sounded like Morse code?
Well, I thought maybe it was somebody kind of like, because it almost sounded like this, like tapping on wood. And thankfully I was recording with my camera as well, so I was able to double check, like, were we moving? Was like one of us kind of tapping our foot or moving in the chair or something? And that tapping was nowhere on the video and it actually wasn't even on my camera audio either. It was only on the digital voice recorder that we heard that tapping.
It might have been the first owner of the house, Albert Martin. He worked for the railroad and he was a telegraph operator. Maybe he was.
That's interesting. See? History and ghosts. Yes.
What research sites do you use? Like, that I have a newspapers.com subscription, so I was gonna look up that little boy in Powell, the one that trained for you. But I don't know if you already have is there any sites that you use to research?
I don't use any one specific. I usually just go very deep into Google, which then takes me on like other things. And I have a whole list of, I guess I could put it maybe on my website or something if you guys are interested, because I have a whole list of like random little places that potentially have a haunting associated with it and weird history that I found just from going way deep into the depths of Google. Yeah.
Where would you buy a spirit box?
Ghoststop.com is a good one, and then there's also the Ghost Hunter store.
Amazon doesn't have.
They might. I just tend to support them because they're small-owned, independent people. Or let me get her. She was.
How did you get interested in this?
How? I don't know. I've always been a little weird, I guess. Which I'm glad that you guys are weird too. Because when I was a kid, people would be like, "Okay, that's weird," or I'd try to tell ghost stories at the slumber parties, and my friends would be like, "I'm scared. I don't want to hear it." I've always just been interested in it. My dad told me scary stories from a young age, probably stories he maybe shouldn't have been telling such a young kid, but. And then I did see my first ghost when I was 7 at my grandma's house, and I was obviously a little like, what was that? But rather than it completely freaking me out, I think that's really kind of what spurred me to be like, what was that? And can I see that again somewhere, please? And so I really kind of just dove headfirst into reading all the books I could. And then, about 20 years ago, I was like, oh wait, reality TV, the Ghost Hunters show, came on, and I was like, wait, regular people can just do this? So that's when I started to go out and do it. Anybody can ghost hunt. Yeah.
You should go investigate up in Delaware. The Art Castle.
Yes.
The Blue Limestone Park.
I did do that one. Yeah.
Because if you go all the way to the back, there's people saying you can hear spirits actually talking without all the machines.
I'll have to go back
at
there
night,
again.
and then one more place. The movie theater in Delaware, the Strand.
I've heard that too.
Mhm.
I've heard
There's
that.
so much history though.
Yeah,
Highly
Delaware.
recommend it.
Everywhere in Ohio is so much history.
The Art Castle is a must.
Yeah. Okay.
Definitely a must.
Yeah, I'll do
Look
that
at
one.
the show.
And they recently opened up the jail, the old jail
Mhm.
for ghost investigations, which I've not done yet. So, yes.
From your experience, have you found that nighttime is the best time to interact with spirits?
Good
And why might
question.
that be?
Yes and no. Well, I think ghosts are active all the time. I've had really interesting experiences during the day. I mentioned my grandma's house. That place all the time during the day. I saw shadow figures, and the electronics would turn on and off, and that was daytime. And it depends, I think, too, on the type of haunting. If it's a residual haunting, most people are awake and doing things during the daytime, so that residual energy would be more active during the daytime hours. But nighttime, I think, is big for investigating because, one, people who do this, we do like to get a little scared, and things are always a little scarier in the dark. But more importantly, like I said, most people are active during the day. So at night, the world is just much more quiet. You're not getting as many cars driving past, people talking, walking past the building. So you have a chance to hear more things than maybe you would hear with just the regular hustle bustle of life. And so I think that's why people kind of investigate more at nighttime. Yes.
As open as you are to the spiritual world, I'm just wondering, don't you ever get scared that you're just inviting, bad spirits as well?
There is always a potential for that. but I do have a very strong spiritual belief. I'm also a big believer in just energy and intention. And I will literally just say when I'm done investigating, nobody's allowed to attach to me. You're not allowed to follow me home. You don't have to stay here, but you're not allowed to come with me. And other than one time that I did not do that, and I brought something back with me from West Virginia Penitentiary. Yes, that was fun. I didn't even realize it at first. Just my energy was down. My whole household, we were all kind of bickering with each other. The energy just felt off. I was clumsy. And then my friend brought up, she was like, weren't you at that prison? And I was like, I was, and I didn't tell them not to follow me. So I had to kick him out. But yeah, usually just saying prayers. I mean, whatever your spiritual beliefs are, but saying prayers. I usually also always wear like blessed jewelry. Like I have a St. Michael pendant that I usually wear. And so thankfully, just my intention and my prayers kind of have kept things away.
I hope it continues.
Definitely.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The reformatory, you said that it was $1,200 or $1,500 a night.
Something like that for a private investigation.
So does that mean you stay overnight?
I don't quote me on their hours, but I want to say their hours are from like 6 p.m. to 3 a.m. or something like
And
that.
is somebody
8 to 3 a.m.
there?
Yeah, so the Tri-C Ghost Hunters, they're an amazing, if you want to go to their website, they also have lists of haunted locations here in Ohio. They run the paranormal program at the prison, and so there's always 1 or 2 people from that group there with you. So you're not, I mean, you are essentially kind of in the prison alone with your group, but there is somebody from the Ghost Hunters group that is there. All right, any other questions? Yes?
What do you think of the use of Ouija boards?
Ouija boards. So, it may be controversial. I'm not opposed to other people using them because in my mind, it's how is that really any different than the spirit box that we just pulled out? You know, we're asking, is there anybody here? Can you communicate with me? The spirit box is basically kind of just like new Ouija boards. However, and I don't personally use Ouija boards because when I was younger and I didn't know how to protect myself spiritually and just kind of was like, whatever wants to come and interact with me, have fun. I had some not great experiences with it. And so because of that, I have kind of a built-in fear of the Ouija board or an aversion to it. And sitting down at a Ouija board, I would be bringing that fear to it. And that fear is what will attract those negative entities because they're like, oh, she's already freaked out and a little sensitive. All right, let me go in there and poke at her a little bit. So I personally don't use them. Same with the spirit box. If I had any sort of fear or felt uncomfortable using the spirit box, I wouldn't use it because, again, for that same reason of you can't go into ghost hunting. I mean, obviously you're a little freaked out and a little afraid, but if you go in really thinking like, I'm going to get scratched, a demon's going to come after me, you're sending kind of those wavelengths out into ghost world and something unpleasant may come. So if you're freaked out at all, you know, obviously a little nerves, okay, but if you're going in anticipating something evil happening, that may not be the best mindset to investigate with. Yep. Alrighty, well
One other question.
Yes.
You investigated anything at the Castle Inn in Circleville, Ohio?
I have not to see.
Investigation going on there, I guess. But
Okay,
my husband and I
nice.
stayed there a few years ago.
Did anything creepy happen?
No, but he was really freaked out the whole time.
Yeah?
Very uncomfortable.
Yeah, he
Like
might have been
something
feeling something.
was around him.
Yeah.
And he was not, I did it as a surprise birthday
Yeah.
present for him. We spent the night and he was like,
Let's
I
not
can't
go
wait
here
to
again.
leave.
Yeah. He very
But
well
he
could have
found
been taken up
something I
on
did
something,
not.
yeah.
We're the only ones there staying
Yeah.
there that night.
Well, and sometimes spirits will gravitate towards like one person or another.
Yeah, he
So
was
sometimes
very
one
much-
person will feel things that
Yeah.
another person isn't.
Yeah, he was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I have one question.
Yes.
So you were saying that when you do some of these paralegal or paranormal investigations, things attach to you. So now do they attach to just the investigators, or like if we went somewhere and like there are ghosts in here, would they have a need or to attach to us?
I mean, I guess, again, these are all theories. Nobody knows 100% for sure. I mean, so I guess in theory, yeah, a spirit could be like, oh, you're pretty, you seem fun, you seem nice, let me go back to your house. But I think it's more kind of when you are actively investigating, it's almost, I don't want to say it's like you're inviting them to come be with you, but essentially you are. You're kind of saying, come sit at my table, come sit down and talk to me. And so it's almost like you are kind of giving them the okay to like well, you wanted me to talk to you. You didn't specify if it could be here or at your house. Like, so that's why I think it's always important when you're done investigating to kind of say, like, you got to stay here. You can't come with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you see?
I just want to ask one question. What about deja vu?
Mhm.
Does that fit into the paranormal?
That could be like the time slip theory that we were talking about, or alternate realities. Again, that's one nobody knows for sure, but there are some beliefs that deja vu is you kind of your alternate reality. You know, maybe there's like a million different dimensions with a million different yous living all these different kind of lives, and deja vu may be one of those moments where those lives kind of aligned perfectly, and so you're tapping into these other alternate realities of yourself. It could be that you are tapping into like a memory of you know, kind of one of those energy imprints. Maybe you're tapping into that and you're like, this feels familiar, but it's not necessarily your memory. You're kind of feeling just the energy or the spirit's memory or energy. So, all right. I love it. I could sit here and talk all night long about this with you guys, but you guys probably want to get home. So thank you very much, everybody.